Hello guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a film review. Tonight we're looking at a Korean film directed by Bong Joon-ho, who I think did the Oscar-winning film Parasite. But tonight we're looking at Memories of Murder, which is based on a true crime. But before we get to that, let's have a look at any special features that are on the disc. So this is the main menu for Memories of Murder. We have picture, play feature, screen setup and special features. So as I look at the special features, we've got director and cast commentary, White Man 1994 short film, behind the scenes, deleted scenes, trailers, and that's it. So you've got a couple of special features on there, but not a lot to write home about. So not too many, but there we are. This is the Blu-ray release. It has got a 4K release. The 4K release came in like a collector's edition with a booklet and stuff like that, and was quite pricey. But I went with the Blu-ray because I've not seen it before, so I don't just buy collector's editions. I only buy them if I know I like the film. But let's get on to the story. So this film based in a sort of like a town like in the sort of countryside, not in like Seoul in the big sort of like city. It's outside, and there's been some murders of where at this time we see two girls that have been murdered. The film starts in like this sort of farming field area where we see one of our police detectives. There are three detectives on there. I'm not going to even try and pronounce their names. And one of them is there being pestered by the local kids, and he's there and he finds within a sort of drainage sort of area on the ground, he finds a body, and it's a young woman who's in her underwear with she's got her panties on her head, she's been tied up, she's gagged, and she's been murdered and raped. And our investigator sort of investigates it, and then it's not too long after we cut to another dead body in the middle of a field, in a farm area. Again, this girl's got her panties on her head, she's been tied up, she's been gagged, and she's been murdered and raped. And so we've got a serial killer on our hands. Before we go any further, this is based in 1986, and it's based on a true story of a serial killer. And our policeman is still investigating stuff, all sort of suspects, and he's got another police detective with him who's a bit sort of like a bit of more of a sort of violent bad cop, if you like. And these are there's three detectives, and these are the two buffoons, if you like, of the detectives, who bring the sort of humour to the film. The main detective thinks he knows everything and thinks he's great, and he can tell a killer and that from just by looking at them, sort of thing, and he can't. And the other guy is just using his powers just to beat up people. So he's quite rough with all the suspects, and they get one suspect, this sort of special need young man who sort of like who agrees with everything they say. So they think, oh, we got the killer, so they can pretty much tell him you're the killer, and he'll say yes. But another detective joins them from Seoul, and he's a bit more serious and a bit more into his job. And he sort of discovers that this young lad hasn't done anything, and he's out there to prove him right. These two other coppers even tried to frame him because they got one of his trainers, this kid, and they've sort of made a print in it by the killer's mark, and said, well, look, that's your footprint and all this sort of thing. So they just want to solve the case to get the award from it, because we see them getting their photo taken by a local paper and all this. And like I said, they bring a bit of humour to the film, which is quite a bleak sort of film. We do jump to see them in their sort of relationships at some points with their families. And our other detective is speaking to the chief inspector, says that there's another body, there's another murder. We just haven't found it yet. So he asks for 2 squadrons to go out and search these fields. And sure enough, they come across a sort of half decomposed body of a girl that's been missing for a few months. And again, she's tied up in the same way as the others. So the investigation is on to find this killer. So that's all I'm going to tell you about that. We'll just jump into the characters. So like I said, this sort of film is made up of 3 main detectives. We've got the one detective who thinks he knows everything, but doesn't, he always gets it wrong. We've got the other detective who's just using his power just to be aggressive with the suspects. And we got one detective who's actually taking it serious and actually investigating it and listening to people. Like there's a young policewoman that works at the station that helps them out quite a bit with some information. She sort of pours some information to some areas they don't think about, like from a radio where there's a song being played the same night of these murders, and like a postcard being read out on the radio, and all these sort of evidence that the buffoony police don't even look at, and they just think it's all hogwash. Just like when the police are doing like the search of the fields, these 2 are playing games with like elastic bands. But I like their characters. I think they're quite funny and quite cool. And we've got our serious detective who's sort of like, who brings the film together, really makes it into a thriller. Whereas if you left it to the other ones, it would be like a comedy, sort of black comedy. But he actually brings it back into reality. And he's a really cool character. And the police chief's really cool. He's really, really cool. He's sort of like, he wants to believe in these other 2 officers, but he just knows that this other one's right. They don't like the other one because he's come from the city and he knows what he's talking about. So all these sort of relationships go on, and we see all these clumsy sort of mistakes happening at the crime scenes, not just by our detectives, but by other police officers and stuff like that. It's quite addictive. The characters are quite addictive because they're quite nice, and you know, you just want to see them get a good outcome and catch this killer. So that's really cool. But let's go to the final verdict. I thought this film was awesome. It's really cool. I'm going to score it a 9 out of 10. It doesn't get a 10 out of 10 because of the humour takes it away from it being a real dark picture. And it's not as violent or gory as I thought it would be, because Korean films do have a tendency to be that sort of violent way. But this one is not as bad as I thought it would be. So it loses a point for that, because I was hoping for that. And I was hoping for some grisly sort of gnarly crime scenes. But there are some, but they're not too bad. But apart from that, I absolutely loved the film. I thought the characters are wonderful. This is based on the true serial killer who killed about 10 women in this sort of little town outside the main cities in Korea in the 1980s. So it's based on that. And they've done it in a sort of mixed sort of way with a bit of humour in it, rather than being just a dark telling of this grim serial killer. They don't uncover as many killings as the real killer does, but they still cover others. And we have, so sorry, we do have some scenes of like where we see one girl walking on a rainy night and she gets killed. I'm sure the actual killer was called the Raincoat Killer because he killed these victims at night in the rain, obviously, because that washes evidence away and stuff like that. But yeah, it plays out really well. Now, the pluses of this edition, it looks really, really nice on Blu-ray. So I reckon the 4K will look stunning. This looks good. It doesn't look 4K quality or anything like that, but it's a nice print. The acting's really cool. The story is really good. I do like a good serial killer film. It sounds so wrong, but I do like them. I find them intriguing and interesting, especially when they're based on true events, because it brings a more of a sort of dark, shivery feel to the film, which in this film it doesn't tend to do that because of the humour that's brought in by the two detectives. But that's a good another way of looking at it. They could have been all dark about it and gone down the route of making this a real dark and depressing crime thriller, but they haven't. They chose the opposite to it, and it's done, and it works. It works really, really well, and it's really enjoyable to watch, and it's just really cool. I enjoyed it so much. I want to see the director's film Parasite. It is on my list to see at some point, but unfortunately I don't own it, so hopefully at some point I'll get round to seeing it. But I do recommend this one, Memories of Murder, 9 out of 10. Any of you guys seen it? If you have, let me know down below. Yes, it's not a horror film, but it's got horror elements because of the serial killer. Most serial killer films you can class as horror films because there's nothing more horrible than a serial killer, right? So, yeah, so it's a crime thriller with horror elements, with a lot of humour through it. So check it out when you can. Also check out some horror channels for me. Check out Horror Hands, Horror Geek, Mavi Film, RS Design, Pizzawell, I Am Icelord, Cat Watches Horror Movies, Grumpy Andrews, Horror House, and The Maniac. And a massive shout out to my lad. Till next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really do hope I'll see some of you soon.